Previously on Your Inner Champion, to vaccinate or not to vaccinate.
Exactly. So it's like, yes, you may have somebody who came in like, dude, my collarbone is still messed up because I crashed this car and that seatbelt shattered my whole bone and it punctured my lung and I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. Your story is awful, not denying that, but it's by no means a way to say seatbelts are the enemy in this story. You see what I'm saying?
Right. And I think another key issue here is, and what we keep getting to, is this word trust, right? That seems to be the crux of this, right? That whole thing about trust. And I will say this: when I went into the ambulance, right, I passed out in the middle of the night. That's how I knew it was time to go to the doctor. Right? I literally passed out, and I'm in the ambulance, and the EMT, he starts examining me. The first thing he tells me right off the bat, because I had been sick for 2 weeks already. Yeah. So the first thing he tells me, you have pneumonia. So I'm letting you know that right now. And he said, so I'm telling you, he said, but your oxygen levels look actually pretty good, all things considered. He said, quite frankly, he said, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been in this area for months now, and Delta has people dying. He said, people are getting to the stage that you're at, but they're responding differently than you are. You look a little healthy, like maybe you worked out or something, you're strong, whatever your own individual thing is. Yeah. But there are people out here right now, they get on just like you alluded to earlier, they're getting intubated and they're not getting off. He said, and these are people right around here, I'm telling you, in this area. I've been to some folks right in this area, and folks are dying behind this, right? And it's real, and it's people like that are seeing it, and they're getting overwhelmed. And you already alluded to that. I've talked to doctors, to nurses who are literally getting overwhelmed. And are actually, even to some point, I've been hearing about some nurses who are getting empathy fatigue. Like literally fatigued about they're asking, did you get the vaccination? You say no, and they're at the point and now where it's just like they're pissed. They're pissed off because now you talked about it. I'm a human being. Just because I'm a doctor or a nurse doesn't mean I'm not a human being with my own family. And when I'm in here, I am putting my family at risk. And by you saying you're not getting it, you're now exposing me again. And and I'm thinking about my family. How much empathy am I going to have for you? When the information's out.
No, and that burnout is real, and it's pervasive. And the good thing, I think healthcare providers generally, like, we get our butts kicked a lot, right? And whether it's Stockholm syndrome or not, no matter how frustrated we are, generally we're still going to provide the same level of care. But yes, when we realized so Florida's Delta wave was one of the first in the States, and it was right after my birthday, like middle of July, end of August, beginning of August. And, like May, June, we were looking good, right? Like May, June, I remember I was double vaccinated. I would still have nurses say, Doc, why you still have your mask on every time you're out about? I was like, I just want to make sure we're really good. And May, June, we were looking real good. I can't even front. It was like, all right, maybe we can get past this thing. And then Delta came and showed no. Yeah. And, then once we had the numbers in the hospital, every day you're admitting 20, 30, 40 patients, 10 of them going to ICU immediately, 5 of them going straight to ECMO, 6 of them on the floor. We had to open up units. We had just shut down where we had used our auditorium parking lot as a sub-hospital, reopen that back up. It was just like, we're back here again? And then you look at the numbers, you say 95% of y'all chose not to get this vaccine. That's what was frustrating. It's like, we didn't have to be here. Like, we didn't have to cut back on surgeries again. We didn't have to, change shifts, and people have to go off unit and do X, Y, Z that they don't do every day. They're not trained to do because they had to help out somewhere. And that level of frustration, when the data was there, is like, no, it's not just some new virus or some variant that everyone is still vulnerable to, like we were last year. It's like, you have this, we have it readily available. You're choosing not to get it, but yet still we're here in this hole again. And that was what's frustrating. Luckily for us, we got past that wave, and we have alternatives and different things now, but that's kind of where that comes from. I'm going to touch on briefly, because I know either you're going to ask it or somebody who's listening is going to think about it. So we talked about the vaccine and testing positive, right? And so it's like, okay, well, if I can still spread it, then how is it a benefit, right? And that's why I talked about the number of soldiers, right? So back to our analogy with Mike and Steve at the restaurant. Mike gets 1,000, Steve gets 1,000, 300 pass off. Mike is now battling 700. The 700 replicates. They're now at 1,500. They're now at 2,000. Next thing you know, Mike is battling 30,000 viral particles in his body, right? So of course, when he's battling 30,000 viral particles and he breathes out or sneezes or coughs, you're getting 5,000 coming out. Whereas Steve is vaccinated, tested positive as well on day 3 because he's feeling iffy, but they kind of fighting stuff. His number of viral particles is now down to 100. When he sneezes or coughs, it's 10 of them coming out, right? And eventually it's going to be 0. So you can test positive even though you've been vaccinated, sure. You're probably not going to get as sick, thankfully. You're not going to get in the hospital and die, thankfully. And you're also, even though you're theoretically not a zero spreader, but your spread rate is way different. Not even in the same ballpark as the unvaccinated, right? Just because of this mathematically, that's just how it is. Because you're fighting, they haven't been able to build it up yet. That's it. So I just want to cover that because I know that gets talked a lot about, like, oh, if you can still spread it, then what's the benefit? There's still benefit. And then the global benefit in terms of, like I said, for example, the booster situation now, where I told you, admitted, in the United States, getting a booster is a personal protection. We're not helping prevent this pandemic by getting a booster. Why? Because if Africa has a vaccination rate of 2.5%, India's at 5%, South America and the Caribbean is at whatever percent, they're going to be uncontrolled replication of viruses in a number of hosts, thereby leading to increased numbers of variants. Yeah. And as the variants change, the vaccine only protects you against one particular protein that the virus makes, that is a neutralizing protein. As long as more variants come out, that protein changes, guess what? We're all back to square zero. Mm-hmm. So that is the real global benefit of, really, we need to focus on a global vaccination approach to minimize the number of hosts in the world that can have uncontrolled replication of the virus, leading to further variants and virulence over time.
You know, it's funny, as I'm listening to you as a thought leader and as an influencer, as someone who coaches people about stuff like this, what's striking to me more than anything is that we are being faced with the real implications of how connected we are.
Yes.
Right? Culturally, linguistically,
travel,
we don't
everything.
Look at each other as the same. We even politically, we fight amongst each other. We argue and debate. And, we argue on the basis of nationality. We argue on the basis of race. We argue on the basis of our political view. And yet, at the end of all of that, we are so interconnected that one person, 10 people, 100 people getting sick has a global impact. Absolutely. Because of how connected we are. And I think that's the thing, as I heard you talk about earlier, when you said, the whole focus on I and my family.
Yeah.
What's needed, what I'm hearing, is a change in focus, not just on I and my family, but on the fact that we're all connected, and what we do, the decisions we make, has real impact on people we don't even necessarily know.
Not even kind of.
And may never know. And it's that, I think that's the challenge, really. Yeah. It's not, the virus isn't the challenge. No. The virus is just a tool. The challenge is us finally changing how we see one another and how we think about the connections we have to one another.
And I love that you said that. I have been on, not necessarily an eye-opening crusade, but kind of my last 2 years, I've focused a lot. If you see my Instagram, I have a mantra I post all the time: humankind be both. And it's been kind of my eye-opening about human behavior, human decision-making, human interaction, that is based on normative behavior. And normative behavior is established by whoever leads the group that we're looking at, right? And as we get more interconnected and more diverse, we realize that a lot of the things that we do just out of doing them are just because we were taught to do them. And we don't even have to do that, right? And we have always been taught to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your own. And we have lost a lot of the interconnectivity, and we start looking and pointing fingers and focusing on the differences when you realize that carte blanche, we're all the same. Like, every human is good, every human is bad, every human is selfish, every human is proud, every human is shameful, sad, and all the outlooks. And the uniqueness of who we are is really rich and something to be celebrated and appreciated rather than used as a tool to separate and point fingers.
Yes.
So that's just kind of how I have viewed the world, and that's why I was able. Where a lot of my colleagues got that explanation fatigue when you have people shouting, "I need the vaccine, I don't trust that," and they start screaming back. I was like, screaming doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right? To get somebody to hear you, you actually have to know more about them than your topic. Like I say, communication is only complete when it's received.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like when I talk to my 4-year-old is different when I talk to my 10-year-old, even though the goal is the same, to get in the car so we can be on time for XYZ. Right? Because communication is important about how it's received. Yes. So every time especially early on, like I haven't had this conversation as routinely more recently, but early on in vaccination, when I talked to my nurses who I work with, and they come to me and say, "Doc, I don't know about this thing." I said, tell me what you're concerned about. Because I want to know where you are so I can help you understand where you're going. Some people were concerned about the history with Tuskegee and distrust of science. Some people were concerned about the side effects. Some people are young and want to have babies and they're concerned about fertility. Everybody had their own. You were concerned about asthma in your breathing and allergy. Everybody had their own thing. And therefore, I can't just give the same speech because you're not going to receive it. If I come talking to you about, Steve, the people worried about fertility, that doesn't impact that. You're going to be like, okay, that doesn't have anything.
Whatever.
Right. I don't care. I have all the kids I want.
Right. Like, doesn't affect me. Right. It's nothing to do with me.
So that's kind of, how I was able to not get tired of interacting with people because I got to bond. I got to really share why I think it's important, why I think there's definitive benefit.
Yes.
And then, what your concerns are and how you kind of make mature decisions with information, not feelings. Right. And feelings are good, but you have to know that they're feelings and they're not facts. Right. That's the other thing. We're now in a society where opinions are facts and facts are opinions. Yeah. Whereas, no, there's data. You can just look at it.
Yes.
You can find anything you want. And I said, and when you come at me with something like, "But Doc, I heard it XYZ," I said, "Yes. What's the denominator?" It's the first question I asked.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of our approach. So in terms of the interconnectedness and the idea of global vaccination, I think that really should be what our leaders, WHO, all the governments are doing. Like, we have to find a way to get people across the globe to get immunized.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, scientifically, not logistically, because I know logistics and production are a mess right now and all the other right. But scientifically, we can be back to 2019 by Christmas. We can be back to the entire world, scientifically, can be back to 2019 by Christmas.
In light of that, so having said that, there's one final point I really want to drive home with you, and then I'd like you to give whatever your final message is for those who have been vaccinated, those who have not. So before we get to that, I looked at the CDC website, and it had an interesting point there. It said if you've had a severe allergic reaction or an immediate allergic reaction to any ingredient in the vaccine, do not take that vaccine that you're scheduled to take. However, it said that you may be able to take one of the other vaccines. Just because you may be allergic to some of the ingredients in this one doesn't mean you will be allergic to the ingredients in the other. And that drove home a point for me. I don't know what's in those vaccines. If you were to ask me what's in those vaccines, I could not tell you. And I would imagine I'm not alone. And so Dr. Clifford.
I would ask you, where did you look?
CDC. I looked in the CDC.
No. If you want to know what's in the vaccine, literally Google what's in Pfizer vaccine. And Pfizer's page is going to tell you the 9 ingredients. They're going to tell you the 9 ingredients in the vaccine. They're 9.
Google is your friend.
Google is your friend. People don't Google. A lot of folks don't Google for the actual information. You Google to support what you want to find. Right?
Thank you.
So you would look at, so you might hear somebody say, "Oh, the vaccine has, disodium glutamate," and then you go spend all day looking up bad articles of disodium glutamate and be like, "Okay, well, see, that's why I'm good." But no, each of the companies, they have to put it. It's on there. And like I said, I know Pfizer's they're 9 things, including like salt water, like really simple, nothing crazy stuff. Yeah. Like really, the vaccine, all of this, like a vaccine's goal is actually uniquely kind of very simple. You're putting in something, so the traditional way would be, okay, let's say your virus looks like a star, right? And basically a traditional vaccine would be that you cut off a tip of the star, so you get this thing that looks like that, and you put like 40,000 of them in a little vial, and you inject it into the body, and about your immune cells are going to be like, hey, what's that little triangle looking thing? I don't like him. You don't know that guy. And we start attacking him, and every time they see that little triangle thing, boom, we know how to attack that, right?
Yeah.
This vaccine, everybody's like, oh, this mRNA vaccine, it's essentially the end product is the same, where it's making the triangle, except the triangle is not a spike protein, and it's using your body's own mechanism to produce it. Rather than giving you 40,000 copies of the spike protein, they're giving you the code that your body can only read in one direction. It doesn't go backwards. That's called reverse transcription. It's not doing that. So it's reading in one direction to make this protein that the body then says, hey, I don't like that little triangle looking thing. We learn how to fight that. And that's why, and they picked the spike protein for different reasons, because it was conserved initial. Because the other thing about variants is that there are literally thousands of variants of SARS-CoV-2 and every other virus, which is why you get a flu vaccine every year. But we're not going to dive too deep into that. But viruses are basically essentially a protein core with a bunch of nucleic acids or DNA or nucleic acid DNA, or what do you call it, like genetic material that they land on a cell, open up a port, inject the genetic material goes in there, makes a mess. Then they try to replicate themselves, and then they send them. So one lands here, goes and makes a mess, makes a bunch of copies of itself, and then boom, 5 of them come off, go to the next 5. Boom, 30 of them come to the next 5. Boom, now we got 100. That's all it does, right? So every time it goes into the cell and makes a mess, when it's sweeping up, getting back together, it makes it a little different. That's a variant. That's it. Right? So we've had thousands of variants up, like I think by July of 2020, before we even talk about variants, they were like documented over 300 in articles, right? So a variant is not necessarily a thing. The only time a variant makes a difference, or I give a damn as a clinician or a scientist, is if the variant now gives this virus some advantage it didn't have before, right? And that's why Delta, we know the name of, right? Because Delta came out of nowhere and he was fast and strong, right? There's Mu that we've all heard about, that if supposedly the spike protein is different enough that our vaccines won't be as effective to neutralize them. But Mu is only a problem if it can beat Delta. Right? Mu is just another one of blank. Right? They've had Mu as well. They've had virus vaccine evading cases in California since January of this year, but it was only like 10. So it doesn't matter if it doesn't have an impact, right? So SARS-CoV manipulation doesn't matter. Like, you're going to be doing the same thing. Mask wearing, distancing, clean your hands, the same way, because you just want to prevent droplets from getting into your mucosa, right? And I think my closing point will be about closing that. But so that's kind of the importance of why this kind of detailed discussion matters, and how you get people to understand all this host of science, right? Like, this is hard stuff to just process and tell people, and it involves me injecting some in my arm that I don't, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not easy to just run over it, but it's also not that hard. I think we've made it way bigger than it needs to. Right? Like, it's literally 0.4 cc's in your arm twice, maybe 3 times in your life, right? And people talk about, oh, what about the long-term side effects? All the medications that we know that have long-term side effects is something that you take every day, multiple times a day for years, right? Like, if you have, they say, oh, like for people for asbestos.
People don't know that.
Right? Like, think about it, right?
No, that's little thing that you just said.
Exactly.
People don't know that.
Think about it, right? Like, you can drink a small cup of bleach, which we know is not good for you. And you know what I'm saying? Like, that's so it's kind of ridiculous. So like we talk, like, for a good example is asbestos, right? Asbestos was everywhere. And people talk about, oh, see, science don't know everything. Look at asbestos. But the people who got mesothelioma wasn't the people who live in the house just happened chance to get a droplet of asbestos in their nose every day. It's the people who worked installing insulation day in, day out for hours at a time. So your exposure load is ginormous. It's completely like different. The human body is really good at repairing itself. It can take a lot of hits. Right? So for you to get long-term side effects, it's usually something that you're taking every day for years.
And that's so important for people to hear. That's why I wanted you here, Dr. Clifford. Because something like that is important for people to recognize and hear. And some people subconsciously may understand that, but they're just not thinking of it, and they're being driven. And this is a point a continued point that I'm hearing that I really want the audience to understand and hear. Your fear is always driven. It is an emotion. So it is driven by emotion, right? And it's real. Right, it is real in the sense that it does impact how you think. It's valid. It impacts how you think. It impacts how you react. However, the way around that is to always have information like what you just provided.
Yep.
That in order to really get the long-term effects, I have to be exposed to this at a level that I'm just not going to be exposed.
Not even close. Exactly.
And it's not even close. And that's important for people to hear. It's not even close. Having said that, I do want to give then, what is your final message, your message to the people out there, both to those who have been vaccinated, who may still be fearful, and for those who are holding on because they're fearful or they have legitimate concerns that they do not want to be vaccinated, either whether it's trust issue or whether it's their own personal medical history. What's your message to them?
All right. So my message is multifaceted because that's how we are, right? The easiest one is what you're doing now. Talk, get an opportunity, whether it's through a friend or an actual appointment, and talk to a trained healthcare professional, not where they're talking at you, but they are listening to you. And if they're listening, then they can give you the information that you would need to make your personal informed decision. So that's number one. That's the easiest way. We can talk to every friend, every person you know on Facebook, every homeboy from whatever, and get whatever information you want to find. You can probably find it. But if you want to get the answer, you want to get information, find a healthcare professional who is going to listen to you, not talk at you. That's a different thing, right? Two, because you're faceted, you have to approach it. You have to find a way to be vulnerable with yourself. You have to find a way to be able to make mature decisions based on information, no matter how you feel, right? Not wanting to get the vaccine is valid. It's real, your concerns, all the history, side effects, people you know who had XYZ, all valid. But if you have true information in front of you, and you can say, like I tell people, all I want you to do is just Google. I Google two things. Just Google worldwide vaccination numbers, worldwide fully vaccinated. So basically, at this point, I think last time I looked was maybe about a week and a half or two ago, we have administered close to 7 billion doses of vaccine against SARS-CoV-2. 7 billion. Okay. I think we're up to like about 3.4 billion people fully, when I say vaccinated, I actually care more about the word immunized. Fully immunized, where they have their soldiers are ready to fight when homeboy comes over the hill, right? So 3.4 billion immunized. And then you look at how many vaccinated people have died from whatever reason. You're going to get a number that's in the thousands, which sounds huge, right? And each of those lives matters, and I care about it. I'm not denying that. Those families are still devastated. They're still questioning, like, I thought he did the right thing, XYZ. Right. Just like I said with seatbelts, there are people who die in car crashes with their seatbelt on, right? So it's not denying that. Never going to deny that. And that's the part I think people get to is like, you keep shouting this, but it's like, no, it's real. Yeah. Then the other side of people who are anti-vaccination, they often find every article they find that says something about the vaccines, about the numbers of this, X, or that. It is, well, look how many people still get infected or getting in hospital, whatever it is. All true. I want you to make sure you apply the same scientific or research vigor to COVID, right? And then when you do that, you're going to get a number that says, okay, out of the 3.4 fully immunized, 60,000 people, which is huge, have died after being fully immunized. Whether it's from COVID or not, most of them don't actually break it down. You can take that number. You're going to get a number that's 0. something, right? And then you say, okay, how many cases of SARS-CoV do we have positive in the world? And how many of them have died? And you're going to divide that and you're going to get a different number that's not even on the same scale, right? So this, again, the analogy is look at car crashes, how many people died? Look at people in car crashes with a seatbelt, how many died and how many didn't? And the scale is not even close, right? The same way we could easily see, yeah, you can't try to tell me that driving without a seatbelt is safer than having a seatbelt on. It's like that, right? And lastly, I really want to touch on, which is a big disappointment that a lot of my colleagues and I in this field have had. The idea, like for you, you're in a unique situation, but not that unique because there are millions of people like you. We have people who have recovered from COVID. You're immunized. Immunized, right? Not vaccinated, but you're immunized. You have soldiers that if they see that fool again, will run up on him. Yeah. Right? And that's valid. Right? I think so that there's a gap now in how we feel about the whole vaccine push and the mandating and impacting people's livelihood and choices based on vaccine or not. Some parts of which I agree with and some parts I don't. I think we need to really take a hard look and really count folks like yourself who are immunized, right? For me personally, I have never had a positive SARS-CoV-2 test. I know I haven't counted it because I didn't take care of the patient, but I may have been infected. I don't know. I've never been that sick. But if I were, I have colleagues, actually, our friend brother, who's Rob Drummond, who have had COVID and they've also been vaccinated. And knowing myself, like I said, the way I justify for myself, if I do end up getting sick with this thing and I'm on that ICU bed, I could be able to look my kids in the eye and say, I did everything I could to protect me, because I promised you that I will do everything to protect you for as long as I have breath in my lungs, right? So for me, it's not that hard of a decision because I don't have the hang up about whatever reason, right? So, but I would still get vaccinated. But I think we need to do a better job of attributing the credit of having gone through that beast of COVID. You didn't have a fun time. It wasn't a joyous experience. And you got to the other side and you're protected by your own immune system, right? I tell people the end point of COVID is the exact same. COVID only goes away when there are enough people that have immunity to it that it can't bounce from one person to the other and eventually it disappears, right? Like I said, scientifically, we can be there by Christmas. Realistically, we're probably going to be dancing in this for years. As variants change and that type of thing, we're going to be going up and down waves and such and such. Like I said, we're looking beautiful in May and June, and then July, August was awful. September and October starting to look a little better again in Florida, right? And we're going to have waves. So then I asked a mature adult individual, what are you willing to do? Because the end point is actually not going to change, right? The end point is still the immunity of enough people either through vaccination or prior exposure. If we keep anti-vaxxing, then you're going to have a lot more people over time who are going to have to go through the rigor of going through an actual exposure and not ignoring the morbidity that includes. So you hear people who are anti-vax say, oh, but it's a 99% survival virus. Sure. 99% of people may survive, which I'm not sure that's the actual number, but you're ignoring the people who were in the hospital for 2 weeks, who were at home struggling for the next 2 weeks, people who were out for long, people who have long COVID, people who can't provide for their families, because the more we ignore it, the systems in place to support you while you're going through it gets smaller and smaller. Like if you had COVID last year, my job, you're good, you're going to get your full paycheck, right? But now you have all these tools available. You're not choosing, you get COVID, you're bad in hospital. Guess what? You're not worried. You better have FMLA. You better have short-term disability, right? And then when you come back, like for example, my car detailer, like your job is to detail cars. Love my guy, Mike. His family is vaccinated, and I talked to him about it. And he's like, yeah, he actually finally got it. But he had his concerns, and I talked to him about it. And I was like, Mike, but think of it this way. If this thing, the only true goal of this thing is to prevent you from getting to the hospital and being dead, meaning that you could continue to possibly work and do cars and whatever, because if you get sick and say, even if you don't die, which I don't want you to, but you're sick enough you have to go to the hospital, you can't come and clean cars or whatever, detail cars. You're not getting income. You're not going to get any government support because you have the systems in place, those networks are now down. And then what's your recovery like? And when can you get back to earning money to support your family, right? And so as a global, when I say the real thing is that we can be done by Christmas, that we have to have the globe immunized, because all we're going to do is we're going to lose people, we're going to lose GDP, we're going to lose infrastructure and time. That's literally all we gain by the freedoms of, I get to choose whether I want to get the vaccine or not. Yeah. Sure, but that's the cost. Like nothing is free. Your freedom to choose to not, like we're not going to mandate vaccines for everybody, every adult, everybody over 12, which I don't want to either, but I would hope that we'd have enough mature adults that are able to, even if they don't like it, or still do something that has the greater benefits. I am sure this pill, you can take the red pill where everybody either gets immunized by infection or vaccination now, or that's going to be an endpoint whenever this is over, 3 or 4 years from now. And the only difference is all this difference equality. Hospitals filled up, people who are trying to heart transplant this can't get an ICU because there's no space. All the oxygen is running out of the hospital. Schools are closed. You got to go back up to virtual learning. All these things that we get to try to protect and mitigate this bad virus by the freedom to not choose.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, and I want to wrap there because I think you really touched on a lot. I love the fact that you nuanced your points and you layered the points, because it affects everyone, all those different layers.
Yeah.
And I know for me, and first of all, again, I just want to say thank you so much, Dr.
Oh, this
for
is
your
great.
time and for your information.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a conversation that all of us should be having at one level or another. And you already said it. The thing that I would say as a thought leader, as someone who does life coaching, who coaches people about getting through their own personal storms, like the one I just went through, having had COVID myself, I would say to everybody out there, the thing that I've heard that really struck me so much in our conversation today, Dr. Clifford, is that one of the things that really is being pushed to change is not COVID. COVID is going to do what COVID is going to do. It's living its purpose, literally doing what its purpose to do.
Doing its job.
And what we have to do as human beings, and it's interesting, not as Americans, not as Costa Ricans, not as French people, but as human beings across the globe, is to come together, connect. Because whether we understand that connection is there or not, we are being impacted by that connection.
Absolutely.
And COVID is making that very clear. For those, I will say, and I always believe in leading by example, I will say that I have made the decision for me to get vaccinated. And this is having had conversations with both doctors and nurses, having gone through COVID myself, which I would not wish it on anyone.
Amen.
An experience,
dude. I thought of a campaign before the vaccine. I think maybe when the vaccine just came out. Last year, I wanted folks like yourself to get the opportunity to just share, especially for us who never got it, right? Like, but it was like a hashtag, wish I had a choice, or hashtag, not in my last day, right? Where there are people who got COVID last year who had no option. Like, we were doing the best we could and whatever happened, right? And you have vaccine care people like screaming their heads off, like, is it the vaccine's a bad guy? Sure. But it's like, there are many people like yourself who like, dude, trust me, this is not the move. It's not a vibe, right? And that's some of the perspective that a lot of us healthcare providers had. And why we were so, like, you saw everybody in January, like, oh, they thought to keep posting themselves, getting the shot, like, they're showing up. It's like, no, we're like, dude, please, like, this thing is no joke, because it's hard. COVID was perfect because it is just safe enough that no one takes it as seriously as they should until it's either too close or too late. Right?
Like, please say that again. Say that.
Right? It is just innocuous enough. Like, it's not like, Ebola, where you hear people like bleeding out, their guts are falling out of their body. It's like, oh, you have to cough, whatever. Like, I've had all kind of bad cold. It's just innocuous enough that people don't take it seriously until it's too close or too late. And I watched it over and over and over again this pandemic. We saw what happened to Italy in February of 2020. And what did we do here? Nothing different. I'm not pointing any fingers. It's just like, that's just what COVID has shown. Everybody's like, nah, it won't be me. Nah, it won't happen to me. And New York was as close. New York was as close to Italy as we ever would have thought. Right, for many different reasons. Right, and then we watched it here in Florida. And we're like, oh, Florida came. It was like April, May. It was like, oh crap, do the same thing. Then it was over in California. Then it was like the middle. It's just like we watch it happen over and over. So I know we're going to watch Delta move through different places. The only difference is that now we have vaccination. And the whole quick thing about Delta and the vaccination, there's a big difference between the timing of your vaccination drive and when you actually encounter Delta as a country. And Israel kind of showed some of that stuff. So there's really nuanced stuff. And as I say, this science is hard. And that's why you can't expect people to just accept it as fake lab without giving them the opportunity to kind of break it down to where they get it. Because it's really nitty-gritty details. Like I say, I just got this new iPad. And when I open it up, he said, hey, you want to set up a new iPad? Bring your phone next to it. I brought my phone, boom, everything just transferred. I'm like, I have no idea how that works. I didn't ask any question. I didn't even know if that's making like a little micro environment of nuclear energy. No idea, right? But now we have people who are fighting scientists and arguing as if we all know how these things work, right? And you can get the answer, but it's going to take some time, and it's not going to be you looking for your own research to support yourself. And then one time, if you have 90 doctors telling you one thing, and one of them is saying it, and you want to listen to that one, ask yourself, why do I want to listen to that one? And that gets to about your own personal, the I part and the connectedness and the benefits. So you have to question yourself and be open to understand that it's okay to be scared. It's okay to have emotion. It's okay to be wrong, because we're all wrong about something.
Right.
But we can help each other learn and grow so dynamically by actually giving up shame and being open and vulnerable to share.
Yes.
Right? So you coming out and saying, I didn't get vaccinated because this, X, Y, Z, because when you first got COVID, you probably had a lot of followers like, oh man, brother Steve got it, but he's been trying to do his thing, but he still got it. See, nothing can be done, not knowing why he didn't get vaccinated. Right. Now they get a grasp of, okay, so he had a core reason for him personally why he didn't want to do it. He's not an idiot. He's not stupid or selfish, right? And then now you get to share, okay, this is my experience. I didn't just come and see while I'm in the hospital gasping or whatever, my little nasal cannula picture saying, go out there and get vaccinated now because it affected me. Right. I had time to process and digest my fear, digest the things that I learned, digest the things that concern me. Yes. And now I can say to you, I plan to personally get vaccinated for these reasons, now with this information. Bingo. And I would not let you think that it wasn't that bad.
Exactly. And that's the final point that I want to make here. Is that my decision is personal and it's based on my experience, just like my fears for getting the vaccination in the first place were based on my own experiences. So I'm getting the vaccination because of what I have learned, because of what I have experienced. For those of you out there who are still concerned, Dr. Clifford already said it, and I think it's important to hear. Challenge yourself, question yourself. Why am I having this fear? What is it based on? Understand that is an emotion. Even your concern is based on that emotion, and then be open to the fact that may have information about it that may not be correct for you. And be open, research, and more than anything, talk to a professional who can give you the information that you do not necessarily
have. And like I reiterate, I want, especially for your father, talk to a veteran who's going to listen to you, because I've seen it, especially coming from the Western Indies, we still have a lot of this patriarchal type overarching medicine where people just talk at you. Get somebody who can, no matter how silly, I don't even want to use this stupid, bad you think your question or concerns are, get somebody who will give you the moment to hear it and respond. Because that's going to help you, and then eventually, of course,
absolutely. Well, Dr. Clifford, I am so, again, appreciative of your time, of your expertise, sharing it with our listeners and our viewing audience. This is a conversation that's important in today's day and age with everything that's going on. It cuts across so many different topics. As a thought leader, as someone who coaches people, I tell people all the time, tell me about your storm and I will coach you through it. This has been a storm that I have been through. I do not wish it on anyone. I recognize that if you still have concerns and fears about getting vaccinated, that is legitimate. And neither Dr. Clifford or I are telling you what you must do, but what we are saying is, here are our experiences, here's our expertise. Make an informed decision before if you do anything else. And if you want to find out more about going through your storms and about how you can be coached through it, please feel free, go to steveberlack.com. You'll see the storms that I've been through, and you can see how you may be helped. At the end of the day, this is all about helping people make informed decisions and getting through their own storms. Dr. Clifford, again, you are amazing, sir. Thank you so much. And for those of you, again, look for Your Inner Champion. This will be out very soon. And please drop a comment if there's anything that Dr. Clifford said that you even want to challenge or that struck you. Please leave a comment, and we'll be sure to connect with you on that.
This was enriching for me. I thank you, Steve. I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for our relationship that we've had for so many years. I love you, not like a brother, because you are my brother. I love all of your followers. I wish everyone the best, and let's all be great together. Humankind, be both, man. I love you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And remember, this is Your Inner Champion. We'll see you next time. Thanks again, Dr. Clifford.
All right.
All right.